So welcome to the 6th lecture in software architecture. Today it doesn't really seem that we are, well, there is architecture in the title of the lecture, but we are going to talk about people. This might come a bit as a surprise, but you might know something about this. You might have seen this. This is Conway's law. Conway's law is occasionally stated in different ways. But this is and there's a longer explanation by Conway himself. But this is the law itself, I think, the shortest possible version directly from Conway. It is not that this is a dogma. This is something that has been observed. That any organization that designs a system, whatever system defined broadly, that means defined broadly, will produce a design whose structure is a copy of the organization's communication structure. So it says that how the organization is organized, that is how the software system it develops will be organized. Communication is between what? Components, parts of the system, whatever you call them. Sometimes, or always, as we still mostly work with software systems which are developed in a form of program code. That program code resides in files. So this traditional organization means that we'll be sharing responsibility or dividing responsibility over some files, often. It's very pleasant if you can have a full control over your file and nobody else messes with it. Often this is not possible. Sometimes versioning systems help us, but many conflicts which are there that need to be resolved make this solution less attractive. So we always try to have our piece of responsibility and our artifacts that we are responsible for. And if we need to talk to somebody, it's easier if they are here, right besides. And we don't have to go anywhere. Even if you have a building and then you need to go to some other floor, then it's kind of, you will think twice. Well, okay, once you might go, then you will see that it takes an effort to get there and just to ask a simple question. So you might use your phone, you might use some other communication, chat is typically used, but this is not a full-blown face-to-face communication. There are so many aspects of that communication that we are not really aware of them until we are deprived of such communication, and then we feel that whole lot of things are missing then there in communication. So one of the most efficient ways to develop a software system is to put people in one room and let them develop software on their own. This is a real agile way. So this is something that you can't do if you have hundreds of people, and maybe you can do that. You can have even this room is sufficiently large, but it will not be suddenly. It will not be that pleasant, because the noise that will be generated by the people will be so destructive that it will overcome the good things about how people are close, how they can communicate, and you cannot make virtual practically 100 or people talk to each other normally. So then you have to divide your people into rooms, and you will divide your software into its rooms, which are some kind of modules, whatever they are. Sometimes they are even classes. Even a method is a kind of a module. So the question now, do you find Conway's law good or bad? Who thinks it's good? Who thinks it's bad? Who thinks anything at all? Well, the thing is that it is not good or bad, or actually we might find it good or bad. We might find, like, do you like gravity? I don't know. Maybe we should be floating. It would be much easier to move. But then again, many things that we are used to would cease to exist for us. So it depends. You might like the physical laws, the laws on nature, or you might not like them. But actually you cannot change them. That's a kind of law that Conway's law is. It's not a law that we introduced, that we made up. It's an observation of how things happen. And I'm telling you this because many people talk about whether it's good or not, whether we should go according to this law or against it. Why should we keep to Conway's law? But this is not the case. The case is that we can talk about how can we compensate the consequences of Conway's law or use them to our advantage. How can you use gravity to make machines that do some job for you? So that's the thing. And with respect to this, we can only observe that this is maybe even this is Conway's law restated so in even shorter form. Architecture of people is the basis for software architecture. How you organize people, how you organize them to communicate, what groups you organize them into would be a basis for the modules that you organize. Maybe I should explain this a bit more. When you looking at you now, so there are some groups formed here. So if I would give you an assignment to develop some software system now, you would find very quickly that even though you are those groups are quite close, those that are very near you are closer, and you will closely collaborate with them over some piece of that software system. And you will develop the means not to communicate too much with those who are not within your group. So you will create some interfaces. You need to agree over some interfaces, so you will find common interfaces, and then you will program to these interfaces, and that will be your contract with other groups, mostly. Sometimes these interfaces are not just interfaces in the sense of a program code element or programming language construct, like Java interfaces. Some programming languages even don't have interfaces, but there are always ways to delegate some this role to some classes. So if we are talking about object-oriented systems, which are most common form of systems, and even though we have some other paradigms involved in programming, usually the organizing paradigm is object-oriented. If it is a system of significant size. So you will then break down the structure of your system roughly into modules according to the groups. Okay, one group might take 2 modules or whatever. So, but the modules that will be created. The responsibility for them will be taken by one group, if it's possible. If it's not possible, then there will be some problems in communicating, and the development of such a module might stuck. And imagine then these groups, but like on a worldwide scale, over different time zones. So recently we had this conference, programming languages, pattern languages of programs, and all the times were like it was probably most suitable to people in Eastern Daylight Time in United States, but there were participants from all over the world, and I think the timing was particularly unpleasant for people in Japan. But anyway, it is very difficult to organize, to synchronize people on a worldwide scale. So then the question is, what can we do about organizing people? How to make the organization in such way and maintain that organization of people so that it is capable of developing good and functioning software, and to decrease the efforts that people need to invest into this. And we've known this for thousands of years. I can't say that we are developing software for thousands of years, but maybe some sort of programming, because programming is largely about planning and organizing things in your life. Then they are supported by these processes that you develop, and especially in terms of the information system development. Often a significant part of information system development is not just the discovery and support for business processes, but process re-engineering. So you re-establish processes in the organizations for which you develop those software systems. So if you take this into account, then we're programming for quite some time, and we are organizing programmers and developers for quite some time. Programming is older than computers. Software is older than hardware. And there's been even one other discipline older than this, and I'm not going to tell this. You might know what discipline it might be. There's a joke, what is the oldest craft in the world? But I'm talking about building architecture, how to build things. Because maybe at one point we did not need nothing to build. Maybe we lived in caves. Maybe it was so that you don't need. But even the caves, they were like a bit arranged to what their inhabitants needed. So building architecture is so close to us, so fundamental to us, to our life. And this is a quote by Christopher Alexander. So he said that there is one timeless way of building. It is thousands of years old and the same today as it has always been. The great traditional software systems of the past, the applications, tools, and enterprise systems in which the user and the developer and everyone who belongs to this feels at home, have always been made by people who were very close to the center of this way. It is not possible to make great software systems or great applications, beautiful software tools, tools where you feel yourself, tools where you feel alive, except by following this way. And as you will see, this way will lead anyone who looks for it to software systems which are themselves as ancient in their form as the trees and hills and as our faces are. I a bit adapted this poem to our context. And actually it is not a poem, it is a quote. So I made it into verses like this. So it is a quite poetic expression of our attitude towards building anything. And as it applies to building architecture, it applies also to software architecture. And I highly recommend to read this book. And it can be actually read in a quite short time, in about 2 hours, although it's much, much bigger. The Timeless Way of Building by Christopher Alexander. You will find it not just poetic, but highly applicable to software development. So if you just start imagining the notions of changing the key notions of building architecture for software architecture notions, you will see that the rest just fits. And Richard Gabriel said that criticized the simplified definition of a pattern, and I find this quite disturbing that many people, many highly educated people and highly devoted people devoted to patterns still quote the beginning of the definition of a pattern, some kind of a definition of a pattern, that it is a solution to a problem in a context. But, as Richard Gabriel said, or Jim Coplin, excuse me, yes, Christopher Alexander said something like that, but then he went further and wrote some 500 pages of this book, and this is the definition of a pattern. So to understand what is a pattern, you need to think of the things that you do naturally, and much of these things are lost, and we are reestablishing these in software development through the agile movement. Although the agile movement starts becoming a pre-processed activity, but this is something that happens when you want standardized things. So, if the time allows for this, please look at this book. It's worth reading. It's not a software book, but it is definitely a book worth reading. And it can be read in only 2 hours, as I said, because Christopher Alexander took care that to emphasize the essential parts that have to be read for a complete understanding, fundamental understanding of the things, and then you can go into details. So this is how we think in patterns. We think about most important thing first. Most important things first, essential things to establish, and then we go into details and develop things further with respect how these things contribute to this whole. Not a whole like a whole like this, but like this. So, since this is all about patterns, I think this is the right way to switch to some patterns here, patterns, but not patterns of organizing. So we are how we organize people. That's how our software system will be organized. So it's worth considering what are the patterns of good patterns of organizing people. And these patterns are called organizational patterns of software development. The question is where to get them. Where would you go for such patterns? Do we invent patterns? Maybe not, but maybe at one point we had to invent some things. But usually we rely on experience, and usually, Christopher Alexander was talking about the great experience in building that has been neglected and forgotten, and that people knew how to organize things which made them feel more alive. And we talk about these things also tend to be more alive. When you watch a movie might be more or less alive. When you play a game, it might be more or less alive for you. And when you use an information system, even this can be more or less alive. So that's the thing, and that's the something that we feel is wrong, which can be explained then maybe in some really measurable things, but like distances and so on. So these windows are too small, or so on, or this stairway is completely wrong because you can't walk normally, or you can measure this, and you feel and you feel it when you walk, because one step is bigger than the other, and it's crazy. So a whole lot of things then you can explain, but the thing is that you feel this quality yourself, and this quality is called quality with, oops, can do this. I pressed something without a name. A quality without a name is something that relates to human perception. A bit of non-Cartesian approach, not just about through metrics, different kind of matrices that you apply and measure everything, and because you decide for these matrices, and then you measure things according to them, and you decide whether they are right or wrong. This is the deeper feeling. This does not neglect that you need to measure some things, and to have right angles for some things and such, and whatever applies, and that you need to use good materials. This is not safety procedures and such things, but if you apply all these things and you come to this stairway or this kind, I don't know, maybe these windows are appropriate for this kind of a room, but like it's then strange why you did so, because you did not follow your natural perception of things. You could have seen or identified this, but just by observing things. And that's it. And getting back to the question, we should rely on experience, and we should rely, in terms of software development, on successful software development projects. And we can observe how people were organized there. So how did they manage there to develop software so quickly, so good software system and so on? How did they manage? What did they use? What kind of strategies or patterns they used? Maybe they considered also this. The software system architecture has to be established in a certain way, but it is being affected by the communication structure of the organization that develops it. What is this? Let's postpone the answer towards this. But these are contradictory forces. This is a conflict of contradictory forces, and we need to find our way to balance them. And this is one way to do it. And probably this is the timeless way to do it. Make sure the organization is compatible with the product architecture. So what you want in your product, you make in your organization. You've seen this minutes before I talked too much about some philosophical aspects, maybe. So you managed to forget about Conway's law. Conway's law is this Conway's law. Are we creating or restating or recreating, restating, reinforcing this law? It's crazy. Probably it should be accommodating to Conway's law. And then this is a pattern to go around with Conway's law. This is the essence of the pattern, and I came to be criticized in this conference of pattern languages of programs, or PLOP, for when I expose patterns in their essential form, essence. So whatever would go there would be kind of elaboration. We can imagine when somebody tells you this is the key. The rest comes out of the context. What does it mean to make the organization compatible with the product architecture? Do I need to take people from all over the world that I have a distributed software development organization and distributed software development team? Do I need to force them to come here? And I actually cannot do that because they will refuse this. And I don't have enough experts here of that kind and so on. And there are different other limitations maybe to this. So I cannot always manage to manipulate people or move people or reorganize people. But then I can rearrange the product architecture. I can devise such modules that correspond to this architecture of people, and not wait for the people to find their way out, or maybe they wouldn't even, how to organize efficiently. I need to admit I cannot move people, and I have to reorganize software modules. Then there might be this problem. People are naturally cautious and suspicious, which is often enforced by rules and practices. But to really do the work, they need to trust each other. Maybe I should have emphasized that this is about freedom, and freedom is the essential for creativity. So you might, looking at this, you might recall all the situations where you needed to, you were forced, and here as well. But I hope not to that extent that in some previous schooling you are forced to follow rules and practices. And you don't understand why is that important, why, and sometimes it really isn't. Or often we can do it the other way around. But we stick to these things and hide ourselves behind them. And the pleasure of doing work comes when you when you do the real work with your colleagues or yourself alone and organize this, and suddenly you forget about time. There is some deadline there, of course. But the accent is not on the deadline or on you being controlled, whether you are moving towards the deadline on daily basis, submitting task reports, which actually maybe no one is capable of understanding completely. When you get all the task reports from all the developers, what do you think a manager can do with them? Just, okay, this report, okay, this is fine, I don't know. They can measure how successful you are because you're reporting, so many reports from this developer. This one is really good. And the manager might not even understand what kind of software you're developing, what are the problems that you're facing. And while somebody reported, I don't know how many things, you're struggling with some quite a tough thing, and you cannot report progress, and you will be punished for this in terms of money. This is not good. This does not generate trust. One way out of this, and should be the timeless way, again, is that those in charge should make obvious they trust others by giving up the watch over activities and letting people decide about their own work. Good and sincere communication is essential to overcoming fear. And this will constitute a community of trust. You all use Scrum in your team projects, or apart from maybe a few of you, but you might come across this approach, and I will mention it again. Scrum. Scrum is probably the most renowned agile practice. Scrum starts with this. You must build a community of trust. Of course, what does it mean to apply this? Okay, you apply this and you say, okay, the pattern is applied, now we trust each other, fine, we can continue. No, these forces operate at all times, and there will be challenges and you will be challenged to introduce such things. You will have doubts about people, which means you will not trust them at the moment. But you must be patient. There's risk involved in this. But Scrum mitigates these things by making the product obvious, not after a month, or maybe after a month, not after half a year or such things, but usually at the pace of 2 or 3 weeks. So it will be obvious, but don't expect these things on daily basis. And something that the essence in achieving this quality of being agile in Scrum is that they use Jira, system to track, to do exactly the opposite. The other thing, yet another thing, is that we need to really organize the software system that we develop, so somehow to give it its structure, its architecture, we say. It's not just structure. For For this, we have software architects. And they really need to focus on the overall structure. But they should not lose contact with the reality of development. There are so many cases in software development where software architects do their job and then go to some other project, and they are virtually unreachable. They made some decisions, and they expect the developers to follow them and then to develop the system that's correct and that works and everything. This is waterfall. A waterfall approach is applicable to things where you really know what you need to do, and so you do it. So you state what you're doing, and then you do it, and implement all the details, and test all the things. You can do this with only with things that are really, really known and specified in detail, specifiable in detail, and never these are information systems. So we need architects, we need the contact with architects. And one example that I can give you is that, and they really do this, so at one conference they explained they were presenting the paper to define with some notation for representing software architecture, mostly component and connector way. So it has some components and connectors and maybe some interfaces, and I don't know. I think much of it you can do, or everything you can do with UML, although it would look like a bit different, but it doesn't really matter. That was some kind of an approach that they were using to define their software architecture, and what they did this in Germany and then sent this to India. Did they know these developers in India? No. Because I asked, what do you do? What is the code that is then being developed according to your architecture? How does it fit this picture? We don't know. We just make these things and send them to India. So architects can operate this way, but they can operate closer to developers. But they cannot fully. They cannot. If they are just developers, then there's a different case that I witnessed in one company. A software architect who was expected to talk to developers, to explain things, was all the time busy programming. So he selected some things that he would program, and then he had no time for anything else. So this is a conflict. So how to resolve this? So the solution comes as an obvious thing. So let the software architect participate in actual programming. Participate. This is the key. Participate. Not to devote him or herself completely to this. And this pattern is called, how else would it be called, but architect also implements. If we go further with this, or we will get back, let's follow the order. So this is a question: how can we make that software architect participate and not, and how what is the least painful way of introducing a software architect? Think about this for a moment. We will get back to this. So let it run in background. So yet another thing related to the question of trust. People don't like being ordered what to do, but the work needs to be organized. So this is not just about the reflection of this was in that community of trust pattern. But this is something really about how to organize work. So you need to tell people, this is what you need, what you need to do, and this is what you need to do, and so on. Do you do this in Scrum? Who decides about tasks in Scrum? Can't tell me the wrong answer so that I can object. I will pretend that you told me Scrum Master. Many people think this is Scrum Master. No, it's Product Owner. Do you know this? Me neither. It's not Product Owner. It's no one. The team decides about the tasks. A self-organizing team. And this is the essence to this. Make the developers as a team decide how to organize development. You might object that, okay, that's nice to say, but how to do this actually? You'll be surprised that you can talk to each other and make a deal, make arrangement, and replan the thing as you go, at least each morning or whenever you start with your work. Or one moment in a day, so let's not be strict. So this is your stand-up meeting, where you don't even have to stand up if you know what you're doing. It's called also daily Scrum. Maybe better to call it this way. I once was exposed to a Scrum trainer who said that just because one of the developers, because he was introducing or inducing Scrum in some company, and one of the developers did not want to stand up. So he took him to the manager, and they forced him virtually to do this. So this is a thing that you know, like it's non-essential thing. You must distinguish between essential. Why do you stand up? To make it brief. We don't want it to take long time. But if someone is disabled or someone does not want to stand up, okay, take a seat, or let's sit together, but let's not make this into kind of 5-hour meeting. Just need to know what's going on and what are we going to do today. Maybe it's wrong. What you think is right might be actually wrong, because some things are missing, but you don't know that. And there might be not kind of a good moment or time to to say this during the day. Everyone will forget this. So let's say the most important things and let's replan this. So all kinds of other patterns come into mind to further organize things according to this idea. So no pattern stands alone. It seeks for other patterns. So normally it creates a conflict. So this is a solution, but it's normal that you ask, okay, but how exactly? What can we do about this? And what's the problem to be solved further? And many other problems are generated. But we know that developer should control process. This is a thing related to creativity. People need to focus on the work within their projects to get it done. But to be creative, people need to be relaxed and informal, exchanging ideas over the project borders. Usually we do not pay attention to this. We cannot make people, if you force another meeting, okay, let's meet each week at a certain time, all the people from all the projects are required to attend. That's another obligation that's not going to work. But you can encourage social structures that are unrelated to workplace structures and which will likely cut across the formal partitioning of the organization. This is a wise way to say something like this. And sometimes patterns have a kind of what's called like ephemeral or simply names that come from particular examples of their application. Maybe a coffee machine for some will be better. Coffee and tea machine and maybe fresh juices or whatever. But even water might be fine. Some point where people will meet for things unrelated to workplace. And you'll be surprised how often people start talking about their work when they're not forced to do so. So they will talk about all kinds of different things when they meet at this water cooler machine to take some water. But in the end, there is anyway, they need to drink water, so you're not introducing anything so special or anything that is not necessary to people. So you cannot make people all the time sit quietly and, you've been forced to do this at many moments, depending on what kind of school you attended. But mostly. As far as I know, at least in Slovakia, it's the schooling system is quite rigid, and in the past it was maybe even worse. So you need to sit strictly and pay attention and be disciplined and so on, and so you need some discipline, but it should come from the inner responsibility, and this is created by establishing trust. And for trust, you need to give freedom. That's complicated, and you need to be patient. So, the water cooler. given the situation that people collaborate remotely more and more, I observed one thing that might be also a pattern. I did not work with this further, like did not or haven't yet elaborated, but we had a discussion at another PLOP conference, so in 2020, and I came to this idea. You know about alcoves? The alcoves pattern I was showing to you. Where you need to have a central place where people sit and talk, but then some people would like to be there, but not completely. And there might be even a window here. And also you might have other alcoves like this in this place. It's a place where you can sit. It's a kind of a small room, but it's an open room, so there's no door there. And you can have your privacy, but you still hear a bit what's happening in the central part. And I think this is something, and this is where we come to the idea of can we invent a pattern which is to some people unacceptable in the area of patterns. So we always actually just observe patterns because Christopher Alexander said so. But maybe he said so at one point, but it was not, it was just like with the pattern definition. Then there was a longer explanation and nobody paid attention to this. So I think this is something that we might need in our remote communication systems or communication system for remote work, so that actually the forces that work are here, that people need to meet as a whole group, but they need to have some private conversations alongside. The solution is to introduce a technological feature enabling people to go to breakout rooms within a communication platform while still being able to perceive what's happening in the main room. Have you ever been separated or sent to breakout rooms within some lecture or some presentation? Do you know how it works? There is like you might all of you might be there connected, and then the presenter decides to divide you into communication to discussion groups by 2, 3, 4, I don't know. You can set it yourself, or variable size even so. And you are divided by randomly. I don't even know. You can do this manually and set people into these rooms. I think so. It's possible even in WebEx to do so. I'm not sure. Usually you make this random, and so people can for a few minutes discuss about something and then get back to the lecture. Yeah, just what we've done when you at the moment that you were more had more attitude towards talking to me, not as today. So when they get back, then they can discuss this in all together. But as we did this before, I heard you talking. I did not hear exactly your words, but sometimes maybe I did, or maybe I could, or if you would be closer to me, or if it would be a smaller room, I could hear some things. And this is not disturbing, this is actually normal, human, natural, necessary. This is a live thing. These breakout rooms, without hearing what this noise of people talking to each other or whatever happens, is dead. So I don't know about any such pattern. I know about many things like technological. So you can have those cameras that can zoom or follow who's talking, and they zoom the speaker and whatever. All kinds of these things. They're nice, but much less necessary than this. And what to say when many people actually do not even turn on their cameras? And we must admit that at times we all do this. So why do we do this? Because some other things are unpleasant and not alive sufficiently. And I think this would be something. And I don't know about having this solution at hand. Is it a pattern? What do you think? Any opinion on this? No opinion. I find it to be a pattern. You know by what? By the forces. If we are talking about some experience, it is not necessarily a pattern. We always look for a conflict of contradicting forces. And usually we talk about a conflict of the most prominent contradicting forces, or a most prominent conflict of contradicting forces, whatever. And when I don't see this in something, I don't feel it to be a pattern, because the conflict is the essence of growth. It is the cut through which this live thing grows further. The cut is the problem, but it heals and builds further structure. Let's have a look at another thing which has been observed. Osmotic communication. Do you know what osmosis is? From chemistry. Roughly, it has been observed that when you have solutions and some molecules and what's called in English, I don't even know, have a membrane that is capable of suppressing some larger molecules which are diluted in your solution to cross this barrier. Then if there is a higher concentration of these resolved or diluted molecules within this area that is kind of packed into this membrane and protected from the rest, it will suck more of the solvent which might be a water, might be water or some other solvent, any other solvent that can pass the membrane inside. So this is just kind of a metaphor for us soaking the information which is around us. So if we are immersed into an environment where people talk about things, we tend to kind of learn this information, to accept this information, to soak this, and it becomes concentrated in us, in our mind. And this means that why not let people talk to each other when they develop software? So there will be some noise, much noise actually, but everyone will learn from this because osmotic communication. However, do you like being in such an environment all the time? Sometimes you need, when you know what you need to do, you need some peaceful moment to set and get the things, to set what you need and get the things done. And for this, you might need a cone of silence, which is just a reference to some crazy science fiction show that I've never watched either, but Alistair Coburn made a reference to this, where people were sitting like in cones like this. Well, there are two people there talking to each other, but they are isolated from the rest of the environment not to be disturbed. Actually, this worked a different way around, so they needed privacy, so to talk secrets to each other. And but the idea is that you separate yourself into kind of separate, sufficiently isolated office and do your things. But to work in agile manner, you need to communicate very, very much. So osmotic communication is the essence for this. So you need, most of the time, you don't need to isolate yourself, but you need to be isolated with the right people. And not right people are certainly those who do not work on that project, who come to disturb you and so on. So you create a cone of silence around osmotic communication, and this is pattern composition. A room with your software development team to work on the things that they need to get done. And who's the gatekeeper? In a Scrum team. Who protects the team from all evil people, mostly managers coming to ask for favors from you to do for them on completely different things? It's who? The Scrum Master. Scrum Master. Scrum Master not only protects the process, he or she protects the team. And pattern composition, yes. There are other pattern compositions that we actually might observe an example here of pattern composition besides that one that I presented. There's one more pattern regarding architects. architect controls product. This establishes an architect role. So it's nothing more. These are like these are called patlets. Patlets, small patterns, almost. You can find these patlets especially for organizational patterns, but they can be expressed for any other pattern. And they express the solution mostly. So I'm not presenting the forces here, so I'm presenting just the solution. So architect controls product is not that much important for us, but then when we have this architect established, which controls the product, who controls the product, then we need to make that architect also implement. And we are coming back to this with how can we do this? One of the things that we can do is to sit the architect beside one of the developers, and so let them work together as a pair, developing in pairs, or pair programming is a technique that has been observed as highly efficient, confirmed in many studies, and actually it is enough if you try this a bit, and you certainly try this. So the thing is that when you are typing code, you kind of lose the big picture, and you are immersed in details, and you cannot think right about all the other things. And someone who is sitting close to you but not really typing code can fully be devoted to this. Then you can switch roles. And there's even herd programming like a bunch of people, like 7 or many other people, many more people, even like more than 10 people, programming together at one computer. Sounds crazy, but there's research on this, and there are distinct roles that people take in this way of programming. Somebody is programming, of course, like typing. Somebody is provoking with some completely contradicting ideas just to test whether this fits, and somebody maybe looks for some errors or watches over typical errors in program code. I don't know. I've never studied this so much, but one professor in Japan does a lot of research, did a lot of research, and continues research in this manner, in this area. So anyway, even developing in pairs can be fun and interesting to try and apply. You might have experienced this in the assignments that you have to elaborate in pairs, like 2 of you working together. Although we are all often afraid that one member of the pair is often completely inactive, not even observing what's happening. So that's the problem with these pair assignments when you study. All in all, what I showed you here, so we can say that organizational problems represent conflicts or contradicting forces that can be put in balance by applying the corresponding organizational patterns. And there is a catalog of these organizational patterns. The link is actually 2 or maybe even 3 links to different things, but essentially the book by Coplin and Harrison is the starting point. Then there are Scrum patterns, and we are getting to Scrum. Scrum patterns, specific patterns for Scrum, although these general organizational patterns can be applied so that you build your Scrum organization. You always build piece by piece, so it's not a thing that you suddenly introduce. And this is what we're going to talk a bit in the remaining part of the lecture, and then within this we are coming to Scrum. So you can build your Scrum to say brick by brick, not to enforce it. Today we start with Scrum. Okay, you know what it is? No, we'll give you a lecture, and you will stick to these rules. You don't have to understand them. Just obey. So let's go further along these lines. Exactly. Do we really need to invent the organization? So I'm opposing myself now. When we have those nice software development process frameworks, or should I ask why I told you it's better to build it brick by brick, pattern by pattern? Do you know about Prince 2? No? Never heard? There's a link. There's a whole book for Prince 2. Prince 2 certification is often required for it's called public procurement projects for when you work for government projects and public things and so on. You need to prove that you have real experts, and this is all often done. Okay, when you complete your studies, you are kind of an expert, but they seek for further certifications to be taken. You can always present an equivalent, but this has become a standard, and previously this did not start with at this point. There was Prince before, just Prince, and in Prince 2 things look like this. The principles on which Prince 2 is based originate from lessons learned from projects, both good and bad. They provide a framework of good practice for those people involved in a project, etc., etc. So it looks like a very promising thing, at least they say so. And the 7 Prince 2 principles can be summarized as continued business justification. Doesn't seem too bad. Learn from experience. That sounds great, actually. Define roles and responsibilities. We should organize ourselves, or manage our organization. Manage by stages. So you need to know at what stage you are, and sounds good. Planning. Manage by exception. Oh yes, we have exceptions to our plans. So they thought of this. That's very good. Focus on products. That's great. Tailor to suit the project environment. Sounds very good. But how to apply these principles? Well, there's a whole book on this. And one of the things where they explain to you how to apply. Part of these things is that people are crucial to the success of a project. It is not enough to have the required processes and systems in place. If the people on a project do not work effectively together, then the chances of the project success are severely restricted. Knowledge of different types of personalities and how these work together can help the project manager structure balanced teams that can work together effectively during a project. I don't know. I don't know how to approach organizing people by this. But they define different people further, that different people say that different people have different characteristics and certain types of people are more suited to certain roles in a given environment. Some combinations of personality types work better than others. And they provide actually a set of roles that you need to distinguish, and you need to map your people to these roles, and there's communication lines or links between these roles, who reports to whom and such things. You can make exceptions, of course, but this is a whole framework that is kind of quite strict in what it introduces. And it does not explain why that much. You might catch something here and there and think for yourself and find some things, some reasons or reasoning behind this. But it is not like with patterns. In patterns, our pattern is not accepted if it is not explaining what's behind or where these things have been observed. Look at this. This is from the Scrum guides. The Scrum team consists of a product owner, the development team, and Scrum master. Scrum teams are self-organizing and cross-functional. Self-organizing teams choose how best to accomplish their work rather than being directed by others outside the team. That's one statement, quite important to us. And cross-functional teams have all competencies needed to accomplish the work without depending on others, not part of the team. This is the other statement. Then it goes further, but it's not essential at the moment. So this is a bit different and more kind of a simpler organization, and there is some explanation to why should we expect this to work. And if we go, but still, this is a framework. This is a prescription. Scrum is a framework, and Scrum Guides prescribes a framework. And if you want to see what's behind establishing such structures, well, there are patterns. And self-organizing teams choose how best to accomplish their work rather than being directed by others outside the team. People don't like being ordered what to do, but the work needs to be organized. Make the developers as a team decide how to organize development. What's this? Developer controls process. We had this before. The other thing there was this: cross-functional teams have all competencies needed to accomplish the work without depending on others, not part of the team. Part of it, not the whole thing, is that architects need to focus on the overall structure, but they should not lose contact with the reality of development. Because this cross-functional teams involves architects. So in a sense, your developers are also architects, but some of them might be more architects, some of them less. Let the software architect participate in actual programming, and this is being done in Scrum, actually. So architect also implements, because your architect is one of your developers, or this role is distributed within the team. Yet better. But sometimes you have a database expert on team. Doesn't mean everyone will somehow interact with this, but not everyone needs to be an expert in everything on your team. Although it is a cross-functional, the members are supposed to know or to express interest in other things. Not, I'm a database expert, don't ask me about graphics. I don't care. But it's our product. No, I don't care. It's your job. This doesn't work in Scrum like this. And how Scrum can be represented, this is a Jim Koplin's scheme, actually probably developed together with Jeff Sutherland, and they wrote a book on Scrum patterns recently, relatively recently. This is an old thing that predates Scrum patterns, but these are normal, like old organizational patterns, which are not Scrum specific, and it all starts with community of trust. And you can follow all other things. We are not going to analyze this here, but there is a way they analyze this, and there is a way. This is a kind of a sequence, or several sequences that you can follow to establish Scrum, to establish and to maintain your Scrum team or Scrum process. So what Jeff Sutherland's Scrum book, one of the possibilities to depict Scrum is this. So you go through your sprint from here, from product owner, from the vision, which is stated in some features, which constitutes your product backlog. Then you start your Scrum cycle. You have your sprint planning meeting. You define what features out of this product backlog you're going to take into your sprint. Then you have this sprint planning meeting to define your sprint backlog, redefine it, and then you have this sprint cycles in 1 to 4 weeks. Daily Scrum, which is sometimes called stand-up meeting, is there to replan things. Always new functionality is demonstrated, and don't forget about sprint retrospective. Some reflection on what you've done good, what you've done bad, and how to improve. How to improve what in sprint retrospective? Your product? No, the process. You need to pay attention to your process. And when you do this, when you present this, this is a kind of a machine, and you put actual people there and some time constraints, adjust some constraints, put some things, you tied some things up, and your machine works. Your Scrum machine works. This is a framework. This does not explain why. Scrum guides are there just to tell you what to do. And they promise you something. By the way, what is the Scrum promises? If you go according to Scrum, Jeff Sutherland says, what? You will have the highest quality product of all times, or whatever is possible to achieve. Would you have a have it most quickly developed. There will be no errors in it. It will correspond fully to customer needs. No, nothing out of that. Nothing. What does it promise? That you will focus at all times at the most important thing for that moment. Okay, then it can change next moment when you resolve this. Because of this, of your product backlog and sprint backlog, and you decide what is important. You vote what is important. You replan this, and it is close. It is going to be finished in 1 to 4 weeks, not after 2 years. You feel the responsibility. You feel the things you selected and you talk about. But getting back to the processes, enforcing a process as a whole necessarily neglects the context. To some extent. Okay, some things are more adjustable. Even Prince 2, Prince 1 or original Prince was not that adjustable, customizable. So Prince 2 is coming close to what Scrum does and such things, but it's not without a price. So you need to understand the framework, and you need to apply it and so on, and you bring your machine there, and you connect people to it to obey the rules. So you do not build your organization piece by piece. It's not piecemeal growth as with patterns. That's the problem. Don't give people time to change, to adapt. And many problems arise from this, and that's why many times introducing Scrum failed, created more problems than good things. But then there's a question if the patterns, there are patterns, and there are kind of, I don't know, is it about 200 patterns? There, not 200 patterns, less, 120 and something like this. Organizational patterns in that book that you have a reference on the course website in the list of lectures under this lecture. So how you need to learn all these patterns and then to choose the appropriate ones. It's too much. And can you learn, try reading some of these patterns, and you will see that, okay, there is some story behind the pattern, but that might not be that attractive, appealing, inspiring, and you cannot be focused sufficiently because you're distracted by work, and you need something to do with your project. So we had an idea of like this is architect also implements by the book. But this is the link actually as well. But I provided it also on the course website. So the idea that we came to was to animate organizational patterns as text adventure games using Ericksonian conversational hypnosis language for an immersive experience. Let's leave out for this lecture. I'm not going to go into details about the Ericksonian conversational hypnosis language, but virtually all our communication is based on suggestions. So we make suggestions to each other and accept them or reject them. and so on. So we are affected or influenced by others, whether we like this or not. So now the thing is that this can be organized as adventure games that are not depending on the context, like this, something like this. These are the scenes of the adventure game that we created for Architect also implements. So first, you see that we are creating the architecture document, then making some implementation according to the architecture document, solving the problems with the implementation, and nothing is specific. You don't say what kind of programming language is used. You let people imagine this. I don't have this game here exactly, but the link is provided with the lecture, under the lecture. So you can go, this is just a model of the game, so you can see the whole space of the possible states in the game. But to play it, you will see more user or player-friendly descriptions that do use that Ericksonian hypnotic language constructs in order to immerse you into what you need to go through. And then in the end you will understand why when you feel how it feels losing insight into implementation restrictions and such things, you will see that you made a wrong decision when you decided not to help your developers with your architecture, not to participate in the development, or vice versa. And this can be played also from the developer side. So this is the model from the developer side. Patterns come in pattern languages. We might represent a whole pattern language as one pattern. And this is kind of a summary of a pattern language, so you know a pattern language can be a sequence of patterns that you can follow one by one to build something. 3, 4, 5, 6 patterns. And these can be summarized by the conflict of contradicting forces, or can be modeled. So this is the work also that we've done here regarding this. Good agile organizations exhibit many organizational patterns. We can assess agility of organizations according to the organizational patterns and apply and recommend further ones. This is also one of the possibilities how to go with organizational patterns. So you can repair some things that are broken in your organization. And this is not against what I said, that you need to build things piece by piece. You don't have to start. If you have some, you start with your context. If your context is a broken, dysfunctional organization, dysfunctional Scrum team, then when you go from this point and repair what's necessary. It's likely that there are some patterns applied there. If you are incapable of reestablishing, okay, we can draw it all away and reestablish completely the organization, but you can't do this. You can't put down this building and build it again, but you can repair some things here. Some things you cannot repair, okay, you have to live with them, but some things you can repair, or at your home. Osmotic communication in distributed software development is related to peripheral perception. There are 2 papers I recently published, although the work behind them is a bit older. This is how we perceive what others are talking about effortlessly, and then actually kind of import this information and then use in communication, which becomes very, very effective. With only a few words, we understand each other because we were immersed in this and peripherally perceived each other and have spoken all that information. This can go through verbal stimuli, through chat. We've done this, and there's some work that has been done and not published with visual stimuli, but it's not important at the moment. One other thing is to know patterns is one thing, but to apply them is a different one. And this is an ongoing work that we do comparing organizational patterns of people in software development with creating drama, because software organizations are actually creating, are actually like theater. You can watch this, and it might be even fun. It's not fun really to the people involved in all those crazy situations, but you can watch this as a show. So that's interesting thing, but we have no time for this at the moment. We can also think of how organizational patterns correspond to particular programming paradigms. And there are things that are specific to, for example, to aspect-oriented software development, and we've done some things regarding this as well. So there are some papers. I think I've put all the references to the relevant papers to this lecture. Maybe those regarding peripheral perception are missing, but I will add them. So this is kind of a thing that you might consider reading, not essential reading. Look at some organizational patterns, though. Where do patterns come from? We might ask this question: don't we bear them inside ourselves? And do we really need to read anything? And do we really need to learn these things if this is essential to human beings? And Alistair Cockburn simplifies these things to the great extent with Heart of Agile. He says all you can have to do is to remember you need to deliver. To deliver, you need to collaborate. What you deliver, you need to improve it. And you need to constantly improve your collaboration. And to understand where to improve it, you need to reflect on this. So deliver, improve, collaborate, reflect. Deliver, improve, collaborate, reflect. Like a mantra. Forget about everything. And if you remember of this, you will be in the heart of Agile. That's what Alistair Cockburn says. Another view of this is, or interpretation of this is the philosophy, Japanese philosophy or martial arts, which distinguishes between 3 stages of a warrior or a learner how to become, which becomes a warrior. Shu, Ha, Ri. The first one is obey. Then when you learn basic things, you obey your master. You do exactly. You do not question. Then when you learn the things, you can detach from this and you can mix things a bit yourself, and you become fluent. But there is another way called kokoro. It looks like a funny word, but in Japanese this means heart. You go to the heart of the approach, and that's where Heart of Agile goes. And you need to master the essentials. You will cope with details, but you need to understand the essence of the movement, the essence, what is behind this. And for this, we have this Heart of Agile by Alistair Cockburn, which then unpacks into many other things, and it goes even further like this. But if you cannot manage other things, then just remember these 4 things around this heart. This is what Alistair Cockburn says. And what's more, there is this lean secret which is essential to Scrum, which looks like a bunch of people doing crazy things, but this is how in rugby the game is being restarted. This is how actually people get together to get things done. I will stop with Ivar Jakobsson's idea of kill all methods, free the practices, and end this lecture with these essential conclusions. Although I can take some questions if there are any plenary questions, or I'm here for your questions after the lecture. I increased the speed a bit because I had few things I wanted to say to you, but we can discuss. We can get back to this topic the next time. We'll talk about software product lines, but there will be space to get back to people as well. So, but if there are any imminent questions now. Doesn't seem so. Thank you for your attention. See you next time. Tí, ktorí majú výskum inteligentných softwarových systémov, tak pokračujeme o 4:00.